I've given quite a bit of thought to the lessons that I have learned as a student and as a teacher during this semester. It's going to be hard for me to boil several months of school and the experience with the students down to 7 minutes, but I'll do my best. So here we go. I found the first part of this semester to be pretty frustrating. Everything seemed to be coming at me at once, and I have to admit I felt pretty overwhelmed by it. But my circumstances have changed, and I feel like I've had time to absorb some of what I've learned and kind of make meaning of it, and try to convey that here. Teaching's been an ambition of mine for over 25 years now. In that time, I don't think I've ever thought of myself as being an elementary school teacher, let alone kindergarten. So as rewarding as this experience has been, I have to admit I kind of felt like a fish out of water working with 5- and 6-year-old students. Including the introductory lessons in the exhibition class, I think Erin and I wrote about 10 or 11 lesson plans. This turned out to be good because it gave us a chance to learn from our mistakes and from our successes and to apply that knowledge to the lessons and to our teaching the next week. This pattern of reflection and correction has been a really valuable experience. Teaching kindergarten students came with a steep learning curve for me. It took me a while to come to grips with the way that these artists think and they create. It's very different from the way I create and the way I typically teach, but it took a little while to embrace, and it took some effort. During our first full lesson, we asked our students to paint portraits of their families. I wouldn't say this lesson was a failure per se, but we did realize that some of our students lacked the prior knowledge and skills that they needed to participate fully, and so we had to change our own expectations and our lesson plans. Rather than create lessons in which our students would develop ideas to create art, we had to create lessons in which the students experimented and played with the materials and created art in the process. This line of reasoning was surprisingly foreign to me and somewhat difficult to maintain. As our students were developing their own skills with color, we also introduced the use of shape recognition as a tool for drawing objects and figures. Not only was it effective, but it was really an exciting development for some of the students. They took a lot of pride in their improving skills, and I think that helped with engagement. Julie, our mentoring teacher, right from the beginning, recommended that we use modeling and behavior, or modeling to show proper behavior and techniques. So we integrated that into our discussions and our demonstrations about art making, into our reflective activities and classroom expectations. During the first few lessons, we were worried about classroom management, but as our relationship with the students and our understanding of them grew stronger, it became less of an issue. We learned that there was an acceptable level of disorder, and that it only took small, well-timed corrections to keep it in line. We also observed that it was difficult for a lot of our young artists to mentally organize a lot of information. So in order to address that, we started using 2 separate demonstrations so that they'd only have to remember basically half of the requirements. It also provided a nice break for the students mid-class. Most kindergarten students have a relatively short attention span, and we address that in several ways. We kept our demonstrations and presentations short. We used art examples by other students and by our own students to make it interesting, and we tried to generate a good level of enthusiasm. We did have a minor conflict as far as the ideology between process and product in the classroom. I think we were a little uncertain of ourselves at the beginning, and so we didn't defend our position as well as we should have. But I think the students' work demonstrates a balance between these 2 perspectives in the end. I think we were ultimately pretty successful in making process the emphasis of our teaching. There were a number of classes where the students were so absorbed in the process of experimentation, problem solving, and discovery that the artwork itself seemed to become kind of a secondary focus. It's difficult to quantify, but I think that a number of our students experienced a fairly profound level of growth in our class. The students who demonstrated a good level of artistic ability at the beginning also seemed to grow in that they kind of had increased artistic freedom and confidence in their own decisions. So the emphasis of their work was on process, but there was also a sharp increase in the quality of a lot of students' work, especially among students who struggled early on. So I feel pretty good about that, and I think it worked out good. I think our class had a significant and lasting effect on a number of students. This was evident in the way they talked about their own art, and the way they approached each new challenge. It's a little bit discouraging to be leaving them at this point. It'd be fun to keep building on that. It sounds silly to talk about instilling kindergarten students with 21st century skills and preparing them for graduation and employment. Regardless, I did see an increase in their ability to demonstrate critical thinking and analysis, visual and verbal communication, and problem solving. I'd like to think we had something to do with that. I do think we were successful working with our students at Polaris. I think we facilitated some good learning, and I think that benefit will last into their academic classes and into their personal lives. I know my knowledge advanced with teaching students and working with other teachers. This class has different times caused me to question my own commitment to teaching. I'd like to say I once again feel pretty confident I do want to teach. This experience with the students has reminded me how important it is to not only teach, but to teach well. And I'd like to endeavor to do that. There we have it.